Greetings, fellow Toastmasters, honored and distinguished guests, and viewers at home. Welcome to Golden Speakers Toastmasters. We meet every Tuesday evening, 7:40 to 9:15 at the Hy-Vee Club Room on the west side of the store. Very nice. So please come on down. If you've been sitting at home, we'd love to see you here. It's as good as it is when you see it from your home. It's way better in person. Is that not true?
Yeah.
So with that, I'd like to welcome up our president, Mr. Louis Denbell.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to read the mission of our Toastmasters Club. The mission of our club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. We are a non-discriminatory club. We have guests here tonight? Yes. Okay. Yes. Would you like to tell us just in one or two sentences what brought you here tonight?
Yes, I'm a student at NUM, so I'm interested in, bettering myself, and public speaking is a great skill to have, so I'm just curious.
Great. Thank you for coming, and at the end of the meeting we'll come back to you and see what you found out about our club.
Okay, thanks.
Jean.
And Samantha, who's going to be a new member tonight, brought her friend.
All right. Okay. Samantha is setting the perfect example for the rest of us old-time members.
That's right.
How many people mentioned Toastmasters this week?
How many invited?
Yes, okay, a lot. And anyone invite people to come? Okay, a handful. Very good. Very good. Excellent. So, I would like to introduce now our Toastmaster for the evening, Stephanie Chambers.
Good evening. The theme of tonight's meeting is fairs and festivals, which is an appropriate summer theme. The quote that Monty put together is, "Live interaction with the crowd is a cathartic, spiritual kind of exchange, and it's intensified at a festival." That's by Trent Reznor. So to begin the evening, I'll introduce our role players. Firstly, our timer is Monty.
Thanks, Stephanie. I am this evening's timer, and a timer. All Toastmaster meetings, there is a timer. We run on a schedule, and someone needs to keep the time. Our meeting is divided into three sections at the timer times. The first is table topics. Table topics are 1 to 2 minute speeches, and the green light comes on at 1 minute. That's when you've completed your minimum allot of time. The yellow light comes on at 1 minute and 30 seconds. This is to give you warning that you're getting close to the end of your allotted time. And the red light comes on at 2 minutes. That means you need to cut it. Paired speeches are usually 5 to 7. Tonight we have one 5 to 7 minute speech. We also have a 6 to 8 and a 7 to 9 minute speech. The 5 to 7 minute speech, the green light usually comes on at 5 minutes. The yellow light at 6, the red light at 7, and so on and so forth for the other time speeches. Evaluations come after the speeches. The green light, they are usually 3 minutes. The green light turns on at 2 minutes, the yellow light at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and the red light at 3. At the end of the meeting, I'll give a report.
Now I'll introduce our grammarian, Annette Estes, to explain her role.
As the grammarian, I have to make sure you speak good. No, that's not right. I will be listening for examples of exceptional language and maybe examples of language that could be improved, bad grammar and so forth. That's what a grammarian does. And also, I chose the word of the day. Now, I have to pick on Monty here. At 4:30 this afternoon, when I had to turn off my computer and leave, I didn't know what the theme was. We didn't have a theme. So I said, okay, I will pick the word arcane. Because arcane is an adjective that means understood by only a few, obscure, mysterious, unknown. Now we know what the theme is, though. It's from the Latin arcanus, which means hidden or secret. Used in a sentence, even though I love to watch mysteries and thrillers, some movie plots are so arcane they're hard to follow. So I'll give a report at the end of the meeting on how good she did. I know you know this, but be sure to use the word if you can when you speak tonight. Work it in.
Okay, now I'll ask our counter Jolene Gates to explain her role.
The purpose of the odd counter is to note words and sounds used as a crutch or polish filler by anyone who speaks during the meeting. Words may be inappropriate interjections such as and, well, but, so, sounds may be her. I will also be noting if the speaker repeats a word or phrase in order to fill time, to fill any hesitation. And I'll give a report at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Our general evaluator tonight will be Rhonda Whitaker, and we'll hear from her later in the meeting. Reader joke master John Miller, we'll hear from him later on, and our ballot reader counter is Monty Coffey. So now I'll introduce our table topics master Art Atkinson to begin the meeting.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, Toastmasters, guests at home, guests present. Our theme tonight, fairs, festivals, is a very appropriate one for the day, and I have a whole page of potential questions for you, and I'll just pick the question that I think you'll have fun with. Who would like to try a table topic first? Not everybody at once. John. Have you attended state fairs or a similar kind of fair in more than one state in the United States? If so, please tell us about the differences.
Fellow Toastmasters, guest, you're no longer a guest, I guess, and viewers at home. We moved to Iowa 5 years ago from Pennsylvania. Never attended the Pennsylvania Fair. I'm from Minnesota, attended the Minnesota State Fair probably a dozen times. Great fair, lots of farm equipment. I think the first time I attended was when my cousin showed a Berkshire boar, gigantic thing, probably from here to here, about 800 pounds or something. Won the blue ribbon, grand prize. What a kick to see that happen, the only time. Attended a number of more times, saw some great music. The Mamas and the Papas, two of the surviving members were there. Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings in a great performance. Captain and Tennille, Neil Sedaka, a number of other outstanding musical performances. I love the conservation program they have there. Once in a while I won some things on the Midway. Iowa State Fair, first time ever 2 years ago. Had the pleasure of camping overnight here with my wife and son. That was a real kick. The only tent amongst hundreds of gigantic RVs. But they gave us our due respect. The fair, maybe I'm biased coming from Minnesota, but it didn't quite measure up.
Who would like to speak next? Jolene. Someone take the paper. Jolene, there are Renaissance fairs and jazz fairs and festivals and music festivals of all kinds. There are dance festivals. There are all kinds of things besides state fair type fairs. Have you ever attended one of these? And if so, tell us about it or them, and what are your most memorable experiences?
Fellow Toastmasters and guest. I have attended probably all of the above in my life. I have been a big fan of festivals of all sorts. My favorite in all the categories that you listed is the Renaissance Fair. I've been to quite a few. There are two enormous ones in Texas every year. I've been to the Texas Renaissance Festival near Houston, and one that was about an hour from where I lived in Texas called Scarborough Fair. They have a permanent ground with the buildings built in very medieval-looking style, and people can rent booths and vendors can sell their wares. Throughout the day, if you attend the fair from opening to closing, there's a play being acted out by actors. It's usually about the King Henry and his wives, or sometimes Queen Elizabeth, and everyone in the play is in full Renaissance regalia, full costume. I always went in costume myself because I was a stage costumer in college, and this was one way to keep on doing it. So I had this gown that was like full length with a hoop that was about 4 feet across, possibly more. About 3 layers of petticoats and a corset, a chemise and a bodice and the tied-on sleeves and the little headpiece. And we're talking about Texas in July. It was really hot. There's something about being in that garb that's it just puts you in the mood. And you don't care. You don't care about the heat. It's like you've entered the Middle Ages and you're just one of the courtesans and the king and queen. So it was always something I looked forward to every year. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to change topics for time travel. Do I have a next table topic speaker? Come on, these are fun. These are easy. Samantha. What is the most outrageous food at a state fair that you have ever either heard of, or seen, or decided not to eat, or that you ate?
Hello, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and viewers at home. I actually had the pleasure of attending the Iowa State Fair this past Saturday with my family, and I decided that I was going to go all out. That meant fried foods, anything I could get my hands on, sugar, anything. And so I went about my day doing just that. And I went from funnel cakes to French fries to any type of donut, salad on a stick, deep fried Twinkie on a stick, anything on a stick. And it showed me how instantaneously bad food can make you feel bad. There was no delay. And so I have to say that one of the most outrageous foods I love is anything on a stick. I think that whole understanding of just no utensils, not even a napkin, just a stick, salad, Twinkie, fried anything. We have definitely allowed ourselves to enjoy as much as possible at these fairs, events, summer, and yeah, so thank you.
Amazed, the deep fried butter didn't actually come out.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. Who would like to speak? Monty, I have a feeling that I have a question for you.
All right.
Okay, Monty,
Yes.
in Sturgis, South Dakota, there is an annual motorcycle event. Is this thing a fair or not? And if not, why not? And do you have any experience with this event? If so, tell us about all of that.
Toastmasters, our guests, our viewers at home. Sturgis, for those that don't know, is the largest motorcycle rally in the United States. It takes place in North Dakota at a small town that's otherwise pretty uneventful for most of the year called Sturgis. Now it's interesting, I don't have a motorcycle. I've actually never been to the biker rally. And I would definitely call it, I wouldn't call it a fair, Art, but it's definitely a festival. I don't have direct experience with it, but interestingly enough, there's a fort, or a camp, a National Guard camp, that is located in a town that's not too far from Sturgis City. It's actually called Rapid City. And I was there doing training in the Army Reserves. We were doing our 2-week annual training. And that's where we happened to be doing our training that year, was in Rapid City. And a lot of the guys were really upset because at the end of the 2 weeks, we were missing Sturgis by 3 days.
Oh.
But we went to go see Mount Rushmore. So right before we left, though, our commander, or my first sergeant, organized a bus tour. Rented a bus. Actually, I think we just took one off the base, is what we did. We signed for it, got a bus, and we went to Deadwood. We went to where the festival area was. And they were busy preparing, and they were setting up stages. They were setting up, all the bars were getting ready. They were setting up tents outside in the streets for the beer gardens. Lots of activity going on, lots of activity. And so we went in, and we were able to talk to some of the locals at the restaurants before things got crazy. Before things got crazy in the bar, we had a couple drinks. And we got to see some of the sights without having to deal with the madness. So Sturgis is definitely a festival. I think I experienced enough of it just with the pre-festival. I would consider going back. You guys should come. Thank you, Art.
Don't have an agenda in front of me. How are we doing? For time? Mr. Timer, I'd like to know whether or not our speakers are all qualified. They were.
Our speakers all qualified, and they were John Miller, Jolynn, Samantha, and some guy named Monty.
Okay. Please take a moment and vote for your favorite table topic speaker of the evening. Welcome back. Now I'd like to invite our tabletop evaluator, Jean Simon Craig, to give our speakers some feedback.
Fellow Toastmasters, guests, and viewers at home, I am feeling so uncritical tonight. I don't know what it is. I am racking my brain to try to find suggestions, but I just enjoyed so much. And that's a cop-out, really. I'm not just, I feel like I'm letting some people down here, but I will do my best. John Miller, he talked about attending other state fairs. Great story about the boar, and who knew that you could have an animal or pig that big? So he showed with his body some gestures, good personal stories. He also said, he gave a good conclusion, he did that Iowa State Fair didn't quite measure up to the Minnesota Fair, probably a little loyalty there. And it's brave of him to say that in Iowa, in the middle of the Iowa State Fair going on. So my suggestion would be careful. Yes, be careful.
Wear a flak jacket.
Check my tires.
Jolynn, other kinds of fairs you went to, great. She started out with a really broad statement. I've been to a lot of different fairs. I really like them all, but my favorite is, and so she zeroed in and went into a particular fair. Jolynn had great eye contact. I saw her looking around the room. She used her arms and gave us a very vivid description of the clothing that she was wearing. I am all about hearing about vivid descriptions on clothing. And then the contrast with the weather, which was a nice little bump right there in the middle. And her conclusion was that the Renaissance Fair was always something that she looked forward to. That was a nice just pull together. I'm going to have to think of something for Jolynn. I could say a little bit more vocal variety, but that's something that you'll learn when you go into the project, the Vocal Variety Project. Samantha, what is it about, she always gets questions about food. It's incredible. We've had mac and cheese, we've had Hawaiian fruits, and now we had fair food. I just looked at her, so what a great line, how instantaneously bad food can make you feel bad. That's a big insight on fair food. That was very, very positive. And she has very positive facial expressions as well, very engaging and fun. A little bit hesitant on the opening and a little bit like this. Could be a little more assertive, confident. That's all going to come. Also, the conclusion at the end, possibly, it's always hindsight's always 20/20, but something about, since you made the comment about how you don't feel very good after you eat all that fair food. Although fair food is interesting, especially those that come on a stick, it's the kind of food that's best to visit but not to live with. Something to wrap it up a little bit more. Monty and Sturgis, just excellent personal story. Felt like we were there, almost missed it, but he made it happen. That was very fun. And his conclusion, very engaging. I consider going back. Why don't you come with me? I look for conclusions that wrap it and pull it together. And Monty did a really good job with that. I mean, could you have gotten in a little just to give us some? I mean,
I don't have a bike.
Well, you were there, you saw it, but I guess, so you see I'm stretching. So that would be a little bit of a colorful gesture. Great table topics, actually, and With that, I would like to turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster.
Okay, now we're getting into the main body of the meeting, where we hear our prepared speakers. So I'll ask Dan Craig to introduce our first speaker, Lewis Denbauer.
Fellow Toastmasters, guests, viewers at home. Tonight, Lewis is going to do project number 4 in the advanced manual called Storytelling. Lewis is the co-author with his wife Diane of the book Madly in Love Forever, a guide to true and lasting love. In addition to being a relationship coach, Lewis is presently bringing communication skills, stress reduction techniques, and executive coaching to businesses. Lewis is working on speech number 4 in the Storytelling Advanced Manual. His objective is to tell a touching story. Let me read the objectives. That's basically the objectives in the manual. It states them as: first, understand the techniques available to arouse emotion, and next, become skilled in arousing emotions while telling a story. The title of Lewis's story is The Joys and Pain of First Love. Please welcome Lewis Denbauer.
Okay. Madam Toastmaster, club members, guests, viewers at home. Do you remember your first love? I do. Her name was Linda, and I met her in New York City in the summer of 1970 when I was 16 years old and had just finished my junior year in high school. A mutual friend introduced us at a gathering. For me, it was instant attraction. Throughout the night, I kept glancing over at her. And guess what? I noticed she was glancing back. Being an awkward 16-year-old boy, it took me about 10 days to muster all of the courage I needed to call her up to ask her out. And I fumbled around for the first 2 or 3 minutes in that phone call. Finally, I blurted out, "Will you go out with me?" She said yes. We continued to date that whole summer, our senior year in high school, and throughout our college career. In June of 1974, a couple of months after my 20th birthday, we got married in a huge Jewish wedding on Long Island. Happy, happy day for me. Now, Linda and I had a dream together. We wanted to become teachers of a particular meditation technique called the Transcendental Meditation Technique, also known as TM, that we had learned during college. What did we do? 8 months after getting married, we quit our jobs, flew to Switzerland, and spent 6 months becoming trained as TM teachers. We flew back to New York City and joined the local TM center in Queens, New York. Now, the center there had a policy that new teachers had to teach with more experienced teachers at first. So every night when I'd lecture, I was assigned a new person who was more experienced than me to help me learn the ropes. And Linda was also supposed to be with different people learning the ropes. I had so much fun with all those different teachers. It turned out, though, that most of the nights, Linda was speaking with another teacher named Michael. 3 months later, the chairman of the center approached me with concern. He said, "Lewis, how are you doing with this this relationship that Linda and Michael have. I said, what? You didn't know? No, I didn't know. I was so humiliated. I was embarrassed. Everybody else knew and I didn't. How could I be so dumb? That night I went home and I confronted Linda. Now I know probably everybody here has had an argument with someone in their family where they kind of raised their voices. This went beyond that. I was enraged. How could you do this? How could you do this? It was so intense she left. A few days later, Michael and Linda came to the apartment to retrieve her belongings. Now, even though I'm a TM teacher at the time, teaching people to be calm, helping to spread world peace, when they showed up, inwardly, I was hoping that Michael would cross the line so I could beat him to a pulp. He was smart, though. He kept his distance. 3 months later, we were divorced. I was left with a pile of anger and sadness. In addition, I had to swallow the bitter pill of disillusionment twice. Once, because marriages don't have a happy ending all the time. The second time, because TM teachers don't always act with morality. My story continues in the year 2001 in Fairfield, Iowa. I'm now living in Fairfield, Iowa. And one of the things that has become important to me has been men's groups, men supporting each other. One day, one of the men in my group said, I'm going to write a completion letter to my ex-wife. Now, as soon as I figured out what a completion letter was, I said, I'm going to write one to Linda. So one Sunday morning, I got up early, I took a cooler filled with beverage and food, and I drove 20 miles down to Lacey, Keosauqua State Park. I put my camping chair in front of a fire pit that was still smoldering from the use the night before. And I started journaling all of the good things that happened in my relationship with Linda, all of the things we went through. We had a lot of fun together. We went to rock and roll concerts. We camped together. We danced. We rode bikes. And we had a lot of parties and great dinners with the other couples we were associated with. But I realized in that moment while journaling, the anger that I was carrying prevented me from remembering and experiencing the joy around those events. So I wrote my completion letter. 3 main points. Linda, I forgive you for the way our marriage ended. Linda, please forgive me, because I was not always the perfect boyfriend or the perfect husband. And Linda, I choose now to remember everything that we went through, all of those good times now. I have fond memories of those. Now, if I were a betting man, I would have, let me back up. The act of writing the completion letter is the most important thing. Sending the completion letter is completely optional. I felt serene after writing this letter. And then I went back and forth. Should I send it? Should I not send it? I decided to send it. So I folded it in thirds. I put it into the envelope. I sealed the envelope. I put a stamp on, put it in the mailbox. Now, if I were a betting man, I would have given you 200 to 1 odds that I would not get a response. I was wrong. 4 days later, I got an envelope from Linda. My hands were shaking as I opened it. I didn't know what to expect. Linda acknowledged the fact that she was very immature at the time and apologized for the way she ended the marriage. And she accepted my apology. And she too wanted to remember all the good times now. Folks, I am so happy I wrote that letter. I got rid of a lot of anger and a lot of sadness and gained a lot of fond memories. Madam Toastmaster.
Let's take 2 minutes and write down some comments for those. Now we'll move on to our second speaker. So I'll ask Jody Manager Carrie to introduce Nadi Gandhari.
Hello Toastmasters, guests, and viewers at home. Nadi is talking from the Computer Communication Manual. He's doing his second project. Mehdi is a professional accountant. He was born and raised in Iran. He came to US in 2012 to pursue his MBA degree in Maharishi University. He is passionate about politics, martial arts, basketball, and economic development news. He worked for the Ministry of Finance and Economics for 5 years in Iran, and now he's joined the school to become a high-ranked tax professional and to develop and reform in the tax system of Iran. Mehdi is doing his second project, Organize Your Speech, and the title of his speech is Digital Guest. Let me help welcome Gandhari.
I never forgot when I broke my cousin's wrist using an innovative soccer technique that I learned from watching cartoons on TV. Madam Toastmasters, fellow members, guests, and viewers at home, all of us are exposed to media, TV, internet, radios, and newspapers. When you turn on your TV and watch movies, cartoons, shows, in fact, you allow the characters come to in your house to sit and perform in front of you and your children and your family. These are digital guests that come to your house without any invitation. I was only 14 when I was watching TV cartoon that showed twin brothers use a strange technique to soccer goals that I want to share with you. Let me show you the cartoon. Watch it together.
Algo extraño ocurre en el campo. Masao se gira sobre su espalda, deslizándose por el terreno. Kazuo lo sigue de cerca. Kazuo se arroja sobre Masao. Por el impulso que los hermanos Corioto consiguieron adherir sus pies en el mismo esfuerzo. Tras su alcance el balón rebota de cabeza.
for kids of our age to see this. I thought that could we do it too, and so I changed a little bit the game and create a new game that's called SIS, means Soccer in the Sky. It was very interesting. I'll change a little bit this game. Two bigger kids lie on their back in the land with their legs up to sky, and two thinner kids would sit on their feet, and one guy stood between two bigger kids and would throw a ball in the sky in the middle of the bigger kids. After that, the bigger kids would shoot thinner kids in the sky with their feet to score a goal. My cousin was a thin boy who I threw him in the sky. When I threw him into the sky, he landed on his wrist. I heard him crying that said, "My wrist, my wrist." At that moment, I figured out there was big difference between fiction and truth. But my cousin was very lucky because I have never seen Spider-Man before. My experience wasn't catastrophic in comparison to other cases that kids were killed or seriously injured themselves to trying to simulate action movies or games. All of us have read news about children or kids that hang or shot themselves or others, read about in newspapers or other media. I had a high school teacher whose son hung with belt from a wall hanger because he wanted to try simulate a scene of Western movie action that showed a Native American being hung with this movie.
Oh, jeez.
Based on the statistic, in 2013, the violent number act seen on TV by American people under the age of 18 is 1,500 action acts or scenes that showed with TV. It means more than 20 violent acts per day. In fact, there are a lot of violent action showed by TV and other media. Our kids spend time with digital guests and learn about them. When we want to buy food, we read about it carefully because we're concerned about it how to fit our children's bodies, while we don't pay attention about how to fit children's mind. And it is very important, and I want to pay more attention about digital guests because they come to our house without any invitation. Thank you.
That John Miller to introduce Secretary speech.
Toastmasters, guests, and viewers at home, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Scott Terry this evening, who is speaking on storytelling, assignment number 5, bringing history to life. I asked Scott for a bio on himself. He said, say what you'd like to about me. What I'd like to tell you about Scott is that he was born and raised by the Inuit in the Arctic Circle and killed him a bar when he was only 3. Polar bar, that is. I'd like to say that about him, but I can't say for certain if that is the truth. Or not. But it could be. Anything else about Scott is arcane. It's understood only by the few. So I'm going to let him remain mystery man. And the objectives of his speech are to understand the purpose of stories about historical events, to use the storytelling skills developed in preceding projects, to tell a story about a historical event or person. Here is Scott.
So true. In the Inuit, don't start yet. So before we start, I want to just make an announcement. This speech will be historical storytelling, but it'll also be some interpretive reading. What I want to say to everybody is this topic involves the Holocaust. And so if anybody has any issues or some disturbance, you can leave now, turn yourself off, or you can see me afterwards. Thank you. He who has a why can live almost anyhow. Nietzsche. Viktor Frankl quoted Nietzsche often, talking about finding the sense of why in our lives. And how do we do that? How do we create that sense of why? How do we create meaning in our lives? For Viktor Frankl, during the Holocaust, in Auschwitz and Dachau, he created something remarkable. He discovered the sense of how do you derive meaning out of nothingness, out of emptiness, out of the worst destruction that ever was. How do you create something so much more? And one surprising fact that will come through tonight is this amazing story. It's so beyond what is expected from the Holocaust, from the worst event possible. The story begins somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Left 2, 3, 4, left 2, 3, 4, left 2, 3, 4. The shouts were overwhelming. He could barely walk. He could barely move. His brain was numb. Left 2, 3, 4. Stop. Left. 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 And they were out of the camp, with the lights trailed upon them. They dare not make a move. They could not make a move. They were so malnourished, so starved. Over rocks, through puddles, they kept going, mind-numbingly throughout the night, into nothingness. And they kept walking and walking. And his friend turned to him in the icy wind, where no sound was made, because it was too cold to speak. His friend, with his collar upturned, said, "If our wives could see us now," he whispered. "I hope they never will. I hope they are having a better, their camp is better, they're doing better, and they never know what happened to us." And they kept walking. "Stop! Stop!" And the rifle butts hit their head one last time, and they stopped. And the the icy wind, and they ran to pick up pickaxes and shovels to hit the icy dirt. And he stopped for a moment and thought of his wife again. Him and his friend. And he knew, without saying a word, that they both were thinking about his wife, their wives. Occasionally, he would look out at the sky, where stars fading and the pink light of the morning was beginning to spread behind a dark bank of clouds, but in his mind clung the image of his wife, imagining it with uncanny accurateness. He said to her, and he heard her answering him. He saw her smile. Her frank, encouraging look, real or not look, was more luminous than the sun rising now. A thought transfixed him. For the first time in his life, he saw the truth as it was set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers, the truth that love is the ultimate, highest goal to which a man can aspire. How does a man come to that conclusion, given what's just happened to him? Then he grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief to have ever imparted. The salvation of man is through love and in love. He understood how a man who has nothing left in the world still may know bliss, be it only for a brief moment, in the contemplation of his beloved, in the position of utter desolation when man cannot express himself in positive action, only in showing that through his deeds he can be a good person and do things in the right way, even here, even now, honorable. That in such a position, a man, through loving contemplation of the image he carries of his beloved, achieve fulfillment. For the first time in his life, he was able to understand the meanings of the words, "The angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of infinite glory." The front man stumbled. Everybody leaned on the person next to him. They fell on him, and the rifle butts hit his head over and over until he got up. But soon his soul found his way back out of the prisoner's existence to another world, where he talked to his wife, and he asked her questions, and she answered him. And then she asked him questions. He answered her. It did not matter. Nothing else mattered. His mind clung to the image of his wife, and a thought crossed his mind. I didn't even know if she was alive. I knew only one thing, which I've learned well by now. Love goes very far beyond the physical person of the beloved. It finds in its deepest meaning, in his spiritual being, his inner self. Whether or not he is or she is actually present, whether or not he or she is actually still alive at all, cares not. He didn't know if she was alive. And there was no means of finding out, none whatsoever. Because there's no mail, there's no communication out of that camp. But at that moment, it ceased to matter. Everything ceased to matter. There was no need for him to know. Nothing could have touched the strength of his love, his thoughts, and the image of his beloved. Had he known that his wife was already dead, it still would not have given himself a moment's. Undisturbed by that knowledge, to the contemplation of her image that made that mental conversation, he would have still that vivid presence with her. Set me like a seal upon thy heart. Love is as strong as death. Logotherapy has 3 principles that are amazing to think about. It touches all on how we create meaning. Number 1, we create meaning by work or a deed. Number 2, we create an experience of something or by encountering someone, such as we're talking about now. And number 3, the attitude we take towards an unavoidable suffering. The second way, this way we're talking about now, love. A second way of finding meaning in life is by experiencing something such as goodness, truth, and beauty, by experiencing nature, culture, but last but not least, by experiencing another human being in its very essence, by loving fully, completely another. The meaning of love is only one way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of their personality. No one can become fully aware of the very essence of another human being unless they love them. By their love, they are enabled to see the essential traits and features in the beloved person even more. They see the potential in them, which is not yet actualized, but yet ought to be actualized. Furthermore, by their love, the loving person enables the beloved person to actually actualize their potentialities by making them aware that they can be and what they should become, by making these potentialities come true. Thank you, Ms. Toastmaster.
Please take 2 minutes and write some suggestions for Scott. Okay, let's take a minute and vote for the best speaker. Oh, first off, I'll ask Monty, did everyone qualify?
We had 3 speakers tonight, but only 2 qualified time-wise. Excuse me, only 1 qualified time-wise.
Lewis. Okay, so I think we already have a winner then, so we don't have to take any time to vote. So now I'll ask Rhonda Whitaker to take over the evaluation section of the
Hello, Toastmasters. My guests and viewers at home. I am here to evaluate the evaluators. Our evaluation section begins with Mr. Dan Craig, who will evaluate our first speaker. So, welcome back.
Hello again, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Lewis. Lewis was doing the touching story, and I think you'll all agree with me that this was a story that invoked a range of emotions. We were involved in the story that he told. We experienced along with him some of those disappointing emotions, embarrassment, anger that he felt. He did a good job in making us experience those emotions. In the manual, it asks, what emotions did you experience as the speaker told the story? I wrote down discomfort, embarrassment, anger, pity, depression. Talked about his disillusionment, and you sort of sunk along with him at that point in the story. How did he use descriptive words and phrases? For example, he talked about the awkward 16-year-old who was fumbling through his phone call, trying to get that first date. In many places, he used very nice descriptions to tell his story. How did the speaker use dialogue to evoke emotion? He, at one point, said, "Do you want to go out with me?" Showing how awkward he was. As the story reached its center, he had the the senior teacher say to him, "You didn't know," which made us feel so surprised and shocked along with him. And then when he confronted his wife, he was angry and saying, "How could you do this to me?" So that dialogue was very powerful. Did the story contain the basic elements of setting, character, plot, conflict, and action? Yes, it had all those things. Were the characters well developed? Yes and no. This is the only place that I thought of something to suggest for Lewis. In this story, we really got to know Lewis, all the way from that awkward 16-year-old to the happy young man at his wedding to the guy having a blast teaching with all those people in Queens to the one who felt betrayed. We really knew Lewis through the story, but we didn't know his wife. She was kind of a little more distant character the way I experienced it. And my suggestion to make it more powerful would be to give her some dialogue. If there was any dialogue, I think there could have been more to bring her to life a bit. The story, as you told it, was very, very powerful, but if you could make it an interaction between the two people that are coming to that conflict, I think it would be even more. Was the point of the story clear? Yes, very clear. The completion letter and how that can lead to good things. And did the speaker build to a powerful climax? This was interesting. The power was in the upset and the difficulty in the middle. The climax was much lower key, but it was very satisfying. He experienced from writing the completion letter that he could let go of that pile of anger and sadness and experience all the good that was there.
Who is evaluating Madi tonight. Please help me welcome.
Fellow Toastmasters guests and viewers at home, Anigan and Mehdi, you have three objectives. One is select an appropriate outline. Second is make your message clear. And third is use appropriate transitions. You did all. So very good job. You had a very organized speech. Very organized. You gave the introduction, what you are going to talk about. You told us what is those unwanted guests are. You showed us the clip. And we knew what you are going to speak about. You have a very good body. So you gave your main part, your main food in the body. So you showed how the children gets affected by those kinds of cartoons and the movies. You gave the example how your cousin broke his wrist. So that was a main part, and it was in your body of the speech. And finally, you gave the conclusion. You compared those movies with food, how people select food. While buying food, they just think about their kid. It has a lot of chemicals in it. It has fat. It has a lot of stuff in it. It's not good for the health of my kid. He may get sick. But we never think what will happen if we feed those kind of stuff in the brain of our kids. So that was really a fabulous speech. I give you 10 out of 10 for the speech. And you have a very good preparation. Very good preparation. Only I have some reservation is you might have done a little bit more of rehearsal. You have to practice. Because English is your second language, mine too. So the thing is, you said you came to US in 2012, so it's only been 2 years. So you're still thinking your own language. So your brain processes 2 languages at the same time. So that's a gap. First, your brain thinks in your language and you have to process it and then speak it in English. So that's the transition takes time. So just pause a while. Whenever you don't find anything, pause a while and then speak. Slowly you start thinking in English and then look at me. That would help. So do a little bit of rehearsal and just practice and pause. And if you don't find the appropriate word, then do it with your accent, what you did here. So you are doing this, showing you're up to sky. Instead of saying upside down, you're saying leg up. That works. Whenever you don't find words, do accent. Very good speech. Thank you.
Well, we will go on to our third evaluator, Mr. John Miller, who is evaluating Scott Terry. Please help me welcome John.
Toastmasters, guests, and viewers at home. Scott, you did a really fine job of setting a mood for this speech and maintaining that mood throughout. What came across most strongly was your heart was in the speech entirely. The plot, first item on the evaluation was the plot of the story clear? I would characterize the plot as the evolution of logotherapy from concentration camp experiences. I don't know if that was the plot you intended, but that's what I gathered from it. How did the speaker succeed in building the story to a climax? You really made a strong case for love becoming this overriding value that carried the story. One point, you were reading something, you were seated in a chair reading. Maybe I missed it, but it wasn't clear to me what exactly you were reading, so I lost a bit in trying to understand that. The pause you did early on, very effective in drawing us into the story. The collar turned as the prisoner was whispering to another prisoner. Again, very effective to draw us in. You also did a very good job of varying your pitch, sometimes loudly, sometimes very quietly. The only other very minor issue was that, maybe Monty noticed this too, as a veteran, I went through so many parades in the military. A couple of times when you said left, you were actually putting your right foot on the ground. Very fine job.
Now let's take a minute to vote for our favorite evaluator tonight, and that would include James Hamilton Craig, our evaluator for tabletop players.
Does everyone qualify?
Thank you, Jody.
Everyone qualified. So that was Gene as table topics evaluator, Dan, Jyoti Raj, and John Miller.
And we're back. Now, I think it's my turn to evaluate. No, it's not my turn to evaluate yet. Now we will have our reports from our role players. We'll start with our role player, Monty Condon, who is our timer tonight.
Thank you, Rhonda. The times for tonight's table topics first. John Miller, you came in at 2:05. Jolynn, you spoke for 1 minute, 54 seconds. Samantha, 1 minute, 25. And Mr. Monty, 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Speeches. Lewis, 8 minutes and 26 seconds. Marty, 7:42. Scott, you clocked in at 9:47. For our evaluators, Dan Craig spoke for 3:28, Jyoti Raj for 3:14, and John Miller for 2 minutes and 8 seconds. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Now moving on to our grammarian, Annette Estes.
Wow, a lot of emotion tonight. I'm moved by all of you. Serious topics, and you all are very passionate and enthusiastic. I wanted to say that because I think the best language I heard tonight was body language. You were all just really into it and really good, all of you, including the table topics. Mine particularly was good with his body language. Table topics, Jolynn, the phrase you used first that really jumped out at me that I really liked was Renaissance regalia. I like alliteration anyway, and that just conjured up beautiful pictures and made me feel good. Renaissance regalia, I like that. And of course, Samantha, the best thing you said was found out immediately how bad food can make you feel bad. Got a good laugh for that. That's a good one. Okay, Lewis, just said you used the language so well. The first things that jumped out were pile of anger and sadness. I think that you noticed that one too. And I also like swallow the bitter pill. Just good stuff. Good stuff. Marty, I just loved your title, Digital Guests. It was so creative. And just told us what it was about. So that, and also I like Soccer in the Sky. That was pretty cool. And Scott, you just grabbed our interest right from the beginning. With the disclaimer about the Holocaust, I'm like, somebody gonna leave? What, it's great. It just really like, wow, this is gonna be good. So, the word arcane means hidden. And our word of the night was pretty well hidden. The only person who said it was John. Yay! Thank you, John. What I like about when people use the word of the day, I like to try to use it to just show how clever I am. But I like it because it shows that you think on your feet after you get here. When you get here and you're giving a talk, you look at the word and you say, how can I work that in? How can the word work that in? That's what I did with mine, and I managed to work it in with Smoky Bear. But anyway, thank you.
Our counter, Jolynn Gates.
This is my second time as odd counter, so I'm a little closer to mastering the arcane skill of being able to count ahs and ums and also listen to the speech content. I didn't feel I did that very well last time. Okay, John, you were clean. I had 5 ahs and 2 ums and 1 false start. Samantha, you had 3 ahs, 1 and. Monty, 1 2 so's, 3 ands, and a false start. Lewis, you had a couple of ands, and you said now a lot. But that might have been part of the structure of the speech, so I'm not sure. Monty, you had 7 ahs, 2 ands, 2 pauses, fairly long pauses, and a false start. Scott, you were almost clean. You had 1 pause that was a little too long to be comfortable, and 1 false start. That's it.
Welcome our joke master, Mr. Scott Terry.
So we're going to change it. It's John.
You'll change? John Miller. Sorry.
Thank you, Rhonda. Toastmasters. Yes, yours. I must correct a joke I told last month. It was about a friend of mine who was a brake fluid addict. I believe I said he could quit anytime. Actually, I should have said he could stop anytime. But he wanted. Headline in the paper. Short fortune teller escaped from prison. The headline to the article read, "Small medium is at large." I always carry this with me just in the event of the need for something light. Do I have time to do this?
We're running a little late tonight, but
I will save it for
thank you. Now, as general evaluator, I make a few comments on our evaluators and their process. All of our evaluators greeted the audience, beginning with Dan, evaluating for Lewis. He stuck to the manual. He followed the manual and talked about the objectives specifically. He was very praising of Lewis and his story, and the power, the emotional power behind it, and the intimacy it created for us as an audience. It was very personal. There were no notes. Dan suggested that you improve the character of Mary by giving her some dialogue, and I thought that was excellent. I hadn't thought of that, but she was kind of a phantom person at one point for me as well. So Dan, I think you did a very nice job in going over the objectives and pointing out the good points of Lewis' speech. I look forward to hearing you do more evaluations. Moving on to Jyoti. There was an excellent opportunity for Jyoti and Madi to compare notes on what it's like to have a second language. Jyoti did pronounce digital a little differently than I'm pronouncing it right now. That's the only thing I would like to mention, because I know Jyoti's very conscious about correcting these things in his speech, and he would like to hear about the things that he needs to change. He came out and spoke about Madi's introduction, his body, and the conclusion in ways that could relate to Madi. I thought this was very personal and intimate interaction between Jyoti and Madi on the level of where they're coming from. When they get up here to speak, they're actually thinking in a different language than what comes out their mouth. Jyoti used some very good gestures to explain to Madi. He modeled things to Madi, and I enjoyed his personal experience relating to what Madi's going through and his encouragement. This is just my opinion, but I think that when Madi was up here and he was thinking about the words, he would look down at the floor. One thing I would suggest to Madi is to find a point to look at up here instead, so that you're not withdrawing from the audience so much. That's my only suggestion. I thought it was an excellent point you made and very constructive. I'd like to see more speeches like that. Jyoti, I am impressed with the power that you put into your presentation, whether it's a speech or an evaluation. You have a lot of personal presence and power behind your evaluations. Now, John, you had the delightful experience of evaluating Scott's very deeply emotional and psychologically moving speech, his story. And I liked that you complimented him on the heart value, the involvement that he had in his own physiology that was expressed to us through his words. I agreed with you that there was a little loss of the thread of the plot when the reading began of the notes. There was some loss of contact with the audience. The gestures were wonderful. I'd like to see you open up your gestures just a little more because they usually stay within about this close to your body when you're talking, your gesture spot.
Oh.
I'd like to see you open up like you're opening out, stepping out of that confinement, because you're very refined and sophisticated. I'd like to see you open up a little more. I enjoyed that John mentioned your vocal variety and pitch were very varied, and I would like to say thank you to our evaluators tonight for these wonderful evaluations.
And now for the fun part of the meeting where we get to find out who won each section. So the awards. So first off, find out the best table puppies. Our winner tonight is Monty Humphrey.
Yes.
I do have one announcement. Okay. I have made a nice little form that goes out 7 weeks, and this is a sign up for speeches. We have all these open speech slots for the next 7 weeks. Come see me. I'll be over at the table over here and help me fill it out. Thank you.
All right. Great. Quickly, I have my PPP, President's Pet Peeve, and it's more educational. So tonight, I won the best speech for the night. And I could go home and actually say, well, the other two guys went over. No big deal. It's like there was no vote. But in actuality, I want to tell you, I'm really proud of winning tonight. Because I spent a lot of time honing that speech down to come in. You can ask Diane. I must have put 2 hours into getting that speech down to qualify. And that is part of what we need to do in Toastmasters. When we're hired to speak at a conference, and they say you've got 20 minutes, they don't want you speaking for 30 minutes, and they don't want to have to clap you off after 20 minutes and you didn't finish what you were there for. So it's a really important part of being in Toastmasters. I had all sorts of other things. I described what Linda looked like in the speech. I talked about the fact that Michael was actually scheduling him to lecture with Linda. There was a devious part of it. There were all kinds of things that I had weaved in that would have made it a better speech, but I wouldn't have qualified. So it's really, really important for us to take that into account. That is part of what we're learning, is to really hone the speech, figure out what we can say, what we can't say. So let's see if we can all qualify by practicing more and more. So, any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting?
Aye.
Any nays? All right, we are adjourned. Have a fantastic week.